depression, love, rejection, Black Sabbath, the Beatles, hardcore, psychedelia, doom metal. What happens when you combine all of these things? You get Typo Negative's Bloody Kisses. Now, as always, before I get into the review, I'm going to do a bit of a history of the band, a lead up to the album, etc. So if you're not interested in that, just take a look down there and you'll see the timestamp for where the actual review of the album itself starts, and just go straight there. If you can't stand seeing any more of my face, then you have to. But that's the best part. With these albums of my life, as I'm calling this series, yeah, just making sure I was actually recording then, because I just did a load without. The criteria for these albums is the album that got me into the band. And Bloody Kisses was the first Typo Negative album I heard. I heard it when it first came out, or should I say shortly after, and I was blown away by it, loved it immediately. The desert dry sense of humour of Peter Steele and all the rest of them very much appeals to my English humour, I guess. Typo Negative are one of those bands who eventually I will review every single one of their albums, because in my humble opinion they haven't actually done a bad album. They're a very special band, very unique band, and so sad that they're no longer around with the death of Peter Steele. Such a loss. He was one of those deaths that really affected me. I remember when Lemmy and David Bowie and people like that died. I was shocked and I was saddened, because they're such great musicians, such a legacy they leave behind. But there were two people in particular that affected me very deeply. I remember when Dimebag, of course, got shot and killed. What a tragedy that was. That really affected me. And the second one was when Peter Steele died. I was actually in Paris at the time. I was on my own, out there doing some photography, and I think I was walking around, literally looked on my phone and saw the news that Peter Steele had died. As I was in Paris, I decided to listen to all of their music, walking around the streets, drinking from a bottle of red wine. Well, 3, but I basically listened to all of their music while walking around Paris, getting drunk, and of course one of the tracks I listened to was Drunk in Paris, which I think's on Life Is Killing Me, which is for another review, but I just thought I'd put that incredibly witty story. Bloody Kisses was the first album that Roadrunner had that achieved a platinum status as well. They got more afterwards, but Bloody Kisses was the first, thanks in no small part to the sleeper hit Black Number 1, which crept into everybody's subconscious over the years. I think Beavis and Butthead might have had it on one of their shows as well, which was quite often a good way of getting exposure back then. Peter Steele and Josh Silver had worked together before. I believe they've been long-time friends, were long-time friends. And the first band they formed was called Fallout. I think that was in 1979 and went up till 1982. And they released one single, Rock Hard, which you can find on YouTube. I'll try and remember to put a link in the description, but I never do. So if you're interested in that, check it out. It's pretty funny. That trademark Peter Steele humour, and of course Josh Silver's keyboards. They split in 1982, and Peter went on to form the thrash band Carnivore, who, if you haven't checked those out, check them out. They've just reissued the first album. I think they did that last year, and again you can find it on Spotify, YouTube. Worth checking out if you're a thrash fan. Along with the thrash elements of the band, though, there was also elements of doom and hardcore, all of which would feature in Typo Negative's music. That's humour that we come to expect. There was a lot of very sexist lyrics and racial lyrics, but I believe most of it was done, I think it was kind of done in tongue-in-cheek. When they performed live, they used to, basically they portrayed themselves as almost like a gang of bikers who survived the nuclear apocalypse and drove into battle to rape and pillage. And they had songs like World War III and IV, Male Supremacy. What else did they have? Race War, Troops of Doom. And when they used to play live, they used to wear hockey gear with like barbarian furs attached when they played live. So I mean, there was definitely an element of comedy to the album. Very, very serious musicianship. Highly recommend you check out Carnivore if you haven't already. They split up in 1987. Now we get to 1989, where Typo Negative is formed with Peter Steele on bass and vocals, reuniting with Josh Silver on keyboards, etc. Kenny Hickey on guitar and also vocals, and Salabrusco on drums, who was with them for the first 3 albums if you include the live album, and was replaced in 1994 by Johnny Kelly after Sal left the band to go join Life of Agony. He played on their River Runs Red album. I think he's with them now still, actually. Now they're back together. Yeah, pretty consistent with the lineup, only the one lineup change. The band was originally called Repulsion, and they had to change that pretty quick because there was a grindcore band that already had the name. Next up they tried Sub-Zero, and again there was another band who had that name already. At this point Peter had already had a tattoo for Sub-Zero on him, which was a minus sign in the centre of a zero. So he was thinking of new band names, and legend has it that he was listening to the radio one day and there was an advertisement basically asking for people to donate blood, and Typo Negative of course was mentioned, which fit perfectly with the tattoo that he already had, and therefore Typo Negative was born. And you had the symbol, the logo all ready to go. It was meant to be. Some of these things sometimes they're just supposed to happen, I think. In 1991 they released their first album, which was called Slow, Deep and Hard. Very nice title. I do seem to remember reading an interview many years ago, I can't find it again, so maybe I'm wrong, but I seem to remember that this was primarily leftover Carnivore songs, which would make perfect sense because there's much more of a thrash and hardcore element to this album. Though having said that, there is far more of the doom and Gothic elements in this than there was ever in Carnivore. But the lyrics on this were far more personal and intimate than previous things that he'd done. One of the major events that would go on to inspire this album was a huge breakup that he went through with the love of his life, actually resulting in him attempting to take his own life. On October the 15th, 1989, he parked up his car and slit his wrists. Thankfully and obviously he was unsuccessful in this attempt. But yeah, it would go on to inform a hell of a lot of the lyrics that were from Slow, Deep and Hard. Much more intimate and personal. Songs about rejection and depression, suicide. Elements of yeah, I've already covered that. A year later in 1992 we get the live album Origin of the Feces, which is obviously a piss take and rip on the Charles Darwin classic Origin of the Species. This was basically, they took, from the legend has it that they took the recording budget for this album from Roadrunner Records, or was it Road Racer at the time, maybe? Roadrunner, whatever, we'll say Roadrunner. And they spent the entire budget on vodka and just got hammered. Again, whether that's true or whether that's just them taking the piss, I'm not sure. But one thing that is known as to be true is that it's not actually a live album. I think they recorded it in a basement, but it's a very entertaining album. Fantastic performances regardless. There's a mock hostile crowd telling the band to go fuck themselves. There's an imitation bomb scare where the entire audience gets evacuated before coming back in later when it's all told they're fine. And there's so much banter from Peter Steele on the stage being antagonistic towards the crowd, telling them to go fuck themselves. Very funny album. I really enjoy this one. The bomb scares, actually, a lot of the antagonistic crowds joke did come from the fact that when they were touring the album heavily in Europe, they got a lot of bad press, who seemingly did not understand the band's humour, or maybe a lot of it was lost in translation on the page, where they were known as Nazi sympathisers and racists, even though Josh Silver, Pete's best friend, was Jewish. I believe a lot of this was actually more down to their desert dry sense of humour. This will come back to haunt them, however, and will play a part in some of the songs on Bloody Kisses. And finally, this brings us up to 1993 and the recording and release of Bloody Kisses, which was produced by Peter Steele and Josh Silver. I think most of their albums were. Very talented, very intelligent people. Now, I always see this as more of a transition album. As stated earlier on, their first album was much more to do with thrash and hardcore with doom and gothic elements. This album takes the gothic elements and really runs with it. This is where the band that when we think of Typo Negative, this is the band that we think of. Now on this album, they've still got all the hardcore, they've still got some of the thrashier elements, but they're much more played down and taken over by the gothic and doomier side of things. They were tentatively titled The Drab Four in reference to their two main inspirations coming from Black Sabbath and the Beatles, which makes perfect sense, and you definitely hear that all over this album. Very quickly worth mentioning before I get into the actual proper review that there's definitely a signature sound to a lot of Typo Negative stuff. There's the rolling R's. There's Peter Steele using his rolling R's to pronounce certain words with R in. Very much doom-laden. Black Sabbath, Beatles, psychedelia, thrash, hardcore, gang vocals play a part in some of the songs as well from hardcore music. About time we got started, isn't it? Track 1 on the album is Machine Screw. This is the first of 4 interlude pieces. Take a listen to it, it's pretty self-explanatory what's going on here. First proper track is Christian Woman, which is without a doubt one of their most famous and popular songs. Rightly so, fantastic song. Can't remember the length of it, it's probably about 8 or 9 minutes. The first 2 songs of the album take up about 20-25 minutes of the album. This is the first real, just straight out gothic song that the band did. Fantastically done. Lyrically, it deals with a Christian woman, a religious woman who essentially feels guilty for masturbating. It's also worth mentioning that I think from the lyrics you kind of glean that the subject of her lust is actually her idol in question. So I guess it's Jesus Christ, as Peter later on exclaims Corpus Christi, and then morphs into Body of Christ. So straight away, controversial lyrics. I know they did the butt selling, the butt kissing sellout version which is where a lot of the lyrics were changed so they could actually get some airplay back in the days when airplay was a thing. I think it was also kind of in reference to a bunch of girlfriends that Peter had had over the years who stated that Jesus Christ was a babe. I don't know if this is a Catholic girl thing, but the lyrics at the end of the song of Peter exclaiming, "Jesus Christ looks like me." Definitely humorous, but intelligently done, as you find with all of Typo Negative's music. Nature reclaims all. Next up we have Black Number One. This, to be honest, this is probably their most popular song. Written Black Number One, Little Miss Scareall. This was actually written about a goth girl that Peter had been seeing, who was essentially self-obsessed. Again, whether it's true or not, but there was a story, they were making love and the girl actually put a mirror over Peter's face so that she could look at herself while they were fucking. Black Number One in question is a hair dye that is supposedly very prominent in the goth scene. As you can probably tell, I don't use it. You're a grey bastard, Snow. Yeah, very tongue-in-cheek song. Another incredibly long song. I think it's about the 11-minute mark. Again, I should have noted this stuff down when I'm making comments about the length of a song. Would help to know what the song length is. I went looking for trouble, and boy, I found her. Yeah, it features the infamous lines, you want to go out because it's raining and blowing. You can't go out because your roots are showing. She dies in black. And there's a section of the song where also he informs us that loving you was like fucking the dead. Loving you was like loving the dead. Yeah, pretty much straight up piss take towards a very self-involved girl he was dating around that time. Bloody hell. Why do I keep doing these fucking reviews like this? I'm cracking the permafrost. Track number 4 is another interlude piece titled Fay Ray Come Out and Play, and I guess this is obviously a reference to King Kong and the actress who played in the original, and I'm guessing this one doesn't end so well, and she doesn't escape the sacrifice to Kong. Funny interlude piece. This one goes into kill all the white people. Yeah, this one is far more reminiscent of Peter's time in Carnivore. The lyrics deal with accusations that were thrown at them after the Slow, Deep and Hard tour in Europe, specifically about them being racists and right-wingers. And I'm going to be talking about that subject much more in depth when we get to We Hate Everyone later on, but this is a very good song. Interestingly enough, actually, as we're on the subject, there were actually 2 versions of this album. There was the original album, and then there was a digipack version, which I think was condensed down to 9 songs, and it took out all of the interlude pieces and the 2 hardcore songs. So you just had all the, it's much more of a Gothic album, and it had the inclusion of another song, which is a great song called Suspended in Dusk. I know those goes, I'd love to get my hands on that copy again, but they're pretty ridiculous prices and hard to find. A lot of the CDs I used to own are just fucking, they're worth a lot of money now, really annoying. Hello, hello. Track number 6 is Summer Breeze, which is a cover of the 1960, I can't remember the name of the year. Damn it, Ben, you should really learn this shit. And this is a cover of a Seals and Crofts song, which was actually originally called Summer Girl and was changed to the more to the original lyrics, as Seals and Croft found the lyrics from the re-pen song to be somewhat disrespectful, so they went back to the original lyrics. But I think you can hear that somewhere. There's a great YouTube channel actually, which I'll put down in the description, who has all sorts of rarities and demos and B-sides and live performances of Typo Negative. Fantastic YouTube channel, so I'll put a link to that below. Typo Negative did a cover on every one of their albums. I don't think they did on Dead Again, but pretty much every other album they did a cover of one of their favourite bands. Neil Young, Black Sabbath, the Beatles, in this case Seals and Croft. One thing they always did with their covers, whenever they did them, they entirely made them their own. They absolutely take this song and totally make it their own. This is such a great cover. I actually do enjoy the original, but having heard this song first, with its doomy, just Pete's vocals on this are fantastic. Such a great song. Next up is Set Me on Fire, which features the lyrics Summer Girl. I wonder if that actually came from the version of Seals and Croft that they were going to do. Maybe that morphed into this song, I'm not sure. But much more of a 60s trippy hippie vibe on this song. Works really well. Kind of a Beatles, Doors, like I said, 60s psychedelic tinge to this song. Another interlude is up next, Dark Side of the Womb, before going into We Hate Everyone. This is a fuck you to everybody who labelled the band anti-Semitic or racist from the Slow, Deep and Hard tour. A lot of great lyrics in this one, essentially saying, in their tongue-in-cheek way, we're not prejudiced against anyone in particular, we hate everyone equally. Some very intelligent lyrics on this one though. I urge you to check this song out if you haven't heard much Typo Negative, because this is just such a, despite its subject matter, there's a kind of, it's kind of fun. There's a humour on this song that just works really well in conjunction with the subject matter. Very well done. The left, they call me a fascist. The right, calling me communist. Shit comes in all hues. Yeah, another kind of Carnivore-esque song, with the band intently telling people to go fuck themselves. Awesome. Yeah, during the European tour they did, I guess it would have been in 91, 92, they received a lot of negative attention from the press, who didn't quite understand their lyrics, labelling them as Nazi sympathisers and racists, all of which I believe was actually more just their very, very dark sense of humour not being understood. This is a bit more than I was expecting. Fuck. Track number 10, the title track itself, Bloody Kisses. Epic song, truly epic song. In the re-release, the remastered version, fucking hell, give us a break. Nearly there. Fuck's sake. I'm not getting any fitter doing this shit. No. Fuck's sake. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Fuck this. My life. Work, YouTube. Work, YouTube. Work, YouTube. Wouldn't have it any other way, man. Where's the sun? Go when it's shadowing my beautiful face. Bloody Kisses is up next. The title track. And this is a true epic song. Again, around the 11-minute mark. It was stated in the liner notes of the Top Shelf edition of this album, a reissue, a 2-disc reissue, that this song was actually written about the death of Pete's cat. Bloody Kisses, a death in the family. I could see this being true, but I don't know. There's some of the lyrics are pretty strong on this one, so I don't know if there's more to this than it kind of has more of a reference to suicide. All her pain she kept inside, could no longer hide. No cry for help, she killed herself. Both life and love could not be saved. She took them both to the grave. Now, maybe it is written about his cat. I don't know. They certainly seem to be pretty intense, deep lyrics. Maybe referencing suicide, somebody who just can't cope anymore. But that's what he states. But his humour was such that, again, maybe that was just a joke as well. You never know with Pete. God bless you, Peter Steele. Next up, we have the final interlude piece, 30IF, before going into Too Late, Frozen. Oh, God. This song deals with infidelity and being fucked over, but it's done in quite a humorous way. It has quite a humorous intro, a bass line from Pete, which is, again, reminiscent of more of the Carnivore sort of side of things, touch more of a hardcore vibe, thrash vibe, and features a lot of gang vocals, 60s, sort of trippy, psychedelic tinges. Too Late Frozen, really great song, love this one. Next up we have Blood and Fire, which starts out with more of a metallic riff, bit more of a traditional sort of metal, hard rock sort of riff. Tuned all the way down to B, I think, as all their songs were, which I'm sure in no small part was due to necessitating Pete's incredible vocal range. Why does it not stay on there? And again, this song is about a bad breakup. No more nights of Blood and Fire. I read somewhere that Pete and his girlfriend, they had their pet names for each other. One was Blood, one was Fire. So together they were Blood and Fire. No more nights of Blood and Fire, indicating that they've split up and no more of those nights will happen. No more of those memories will transpire. They will just cease to be. There's also a very popular remix of this song that was on the Mortal Kombat soundtrack, which is worth checking out as well. The Ashes to Ashes. Is it Ashes to Ashes? Yeah, the Ashes to Ashes remix. A lot of people seem to prefer to the original, actually. I prefer the original myself, but there you go. Never been a fan of the remix. Always a more tepid, dulled down version of an already awesome song. What can we do to make this shitter? Let's remix it. And finally we have Can't Lose You, which again is supposedly written about Peter Steele's cat. But I suspect yet again there's something else to this. The lyrics have a feeling of begging somebody not to leave. Maybe that relationship that is finally over. You all know's done. Both of you know it's not working. Both of you know it's not going anywhere. You know it's over. And in this case, I guess it's Peter just begging, please don't go. Very strong Beatle elements on this one. Features a sitar, very Indian sounding, reminiscent of a lot of the Beatles. Ravi Shankar, was it? His influence on the band. Great end to the album, and the song ends very abruptly as well, as I guess did the relationship, which is why I think there's more to it than the cat dying. Well, then again, I suppose the cat dying would be quite abrupt as well, so I don't know. You never know with Pete Steele. And so that, very sadly, is Bloody Kisses. Great album. Peter Steele is truly one of those figures that I greatly miss in music. Always loved the release of a new Typo Negative album. Such a great interviewer as well. I mean, if nothing else, even if you're not a fan of the music, just check out Peter Steele interviews on YouTube. Such a humorous, genuinely intelligent, funny guy. Seemed like he had a big heart. Very troubled guy, troubled genius. But yeah, rest in peace. God bless Peter Steele. True loss to our world. Also, it's worth mentioning that Kenny Hickey, Josh Silver, and Johnny Kelly, the remaining members of Typo, upon hearing of his death, they just announced the Typo Negative was done. You cannot replace Peter Steele, and they knew that, and I think full respect to them for acknowledging that, for what would have been their life at that point, and to realise we're not replacing the guy, we're done. So sadly that ended Typo Negative, but The joy is we still have 7 albums of theirs, all of which, as I stated earlier, in my opinion, are fantastic albums. I love all of them, and I will be reviewing each and every one of them at some point throughout my ramblings over the years to come. The next classic album I'm going to review will be Demanufacture by Fear Factory. That's going to be the next one. And I've got a whole bunch of other shit that I've got to get sorted as well. Thanks again to everybody who subscribed, commented, liked, and piling in suggestions. I'm getting more and more viewer requests, which I'm going to have to get onto. It's simply now going to have to be a part of what I do. So keep an eye out, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, share, get the word out there. I want to get to 1,000 subscribers as soon as possible. I want more and more people to see these. I'm not going to sit here and, well, you're walking for a start. I'm not going to stand here and try and pretend to be all humble and that you know, I'm happy with just a couple of 100 subscribers. Fuck that. I want everybody to see this show, and I do see it as a show. Oh, you pretentious twat. Yeah, I want as many people as possible to be watching, because I want to spread my love all over for metal. Yeah, like, comment, subscribe, notify, share.